Africa 24. This program is brought to you by the AFCFTA Secretariat.
When we talk about the Continental Free Trade Area, we talk about investment, but more of financing of small and medium-sized enterprises. Today, to discuss the crucial issue of financing and credit for these entities, we welcome Admassu Tadesse, President and Managing Director of Trade and Development Bank. Sir, welcome to Africa 24 English.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, I would like to know something. According to the IMF, almost half of the 40 million SMEs in sub-Saharan Africa have no access to credit, yet they make up to 90% of the continent's businesses and employ 60% of the workforce. To expand beyond the national market, they need to increase their production capacity and also they need financing. How banks like the Development Bank like yours working to address this challenge?
Yeah, I think you've really highlighted the challenge. It's an ongoing conversation that's been happening in the industry, continental bodies trying to see what more can be done. Banks, of course, historically have struggled to serve that segment, even though there has been progress. But just generally, it's an underserved segment, partly because of the cost to serve it. That cost to serve SMEs has different aspects to it. Part of it is just perceptions, but also there's the hard reality of opportunity costs. So banks end up financing other segments that are a bit easier to serve and sometimes a bit more profitable to serve. And so there's been a lot of disappointment that this sector hasn't received adequate attention. But the good news is there's innovations happening in the industry. We've seen the magic of digital technologies and mobile technologies, how that has reduced the cost of access to services, and that's now coming in the financial sector. We're beginning to see new business models coming in, leveraging that kind of technology to reduce the cost to serve SMEs and to improve the access to information so that credit can be priced better and credit can be extended more efficiently to that segment. So there are very positive developments happening, and it's of course on the back of the successes we've seen in other sectors. And so that was the positive aspect to it. Of course, there was also discussions around regulation. How can regulation be streamlined, refined, improved? How can different methods of financing be considered to move away from the classical approach of collateralized lending? How can credit providers look at cash flow based lending practices? That requires a little bit more harder work because you have to go closer to the client and look at their cash flows, model their revenue, and not always require such a significant collateral, sometimes not have any collateral at all. And in the world of microfinance, that's been determined to be possible and feasible. That's one revolution in the financial sector we've seen over the decades that has really been proving very effective as another way of extending credit successfully, sustainably. And so there's a lot more innovation coming through into the SME space, and of course the business models that are being tested now are proving more and more attractive to even more conventional players. So yeah, so technology is always a game changer.
Technology is a game changer. Today, the AFCFTA aims to improve the inclusion of women and young people in trade. A protocol has been drawn up to this end. What arrangements, if any, TDB puts in place for this segment of the population?
Well, I think women as a segment of the MSME space have also been targeted as leaders of enterprises that need a little bit more attention, a little bit more facilitation. And so there's various programs that have been rolled out in recent years to make sure that targeted credit programs are being made available to women and youth-led SMEs or even micro MSMEs. And so there's a lot more effort being made, and I think a number of even international players have continued to really push the envelope in that regard, providing portfolio guarantees, providing liquidity through specialized facilities that are provided to banks or specialized lenders who are closer to the ground, better placed to actually reach and serve SMEs. And so you have the whole ecosystem of finance trying to boost the capacity to that segment of the African private sector. There's a lot of awareness of the imperative, the challenge, and the importance of doing much more in that segment. And I think at least the sensitization is there. Now it's just the practicalities, how can we move the needle further? How can we do it in a sustainable way? And how can we encourage more innovation and get risk appetites to go up a little bit more?
In your opinion, what are the partnerships that are crucial to better address the challenge of financing SMEs and fulfilling the promises of the AFCFTA?
Well, the AFCFTA is all about Pan-Africanism, and that's all about joining up the continent. And of course, it's a big continent. Many countries, it's 2 billion or so people, more or less, on its way towards being a common market. So, it's a very big place, and so we all need to find ways to work together. So we have a number of clubs and syndications where we get together and co-finance projects, we co-finance facilities. Because we obviously all have to share risk, and we all have prudential limits around how much we can do with one particular transaction. So it's very natural for different African financial institutions, but also international players, to come in and hold hands and close the circle of financing that's required for a particular project or a facility. So partnerships and cooperation is quite common in the industry. African financial institutions have formed their own associations. We've got our own clubs now where we work much more actively together to be much more intentional and to be much more focused and to be more aggressive in how we work well together to synergize and bring our collective capacities together to do more.
Among the challenges that traders and investors face, we can talk about the public authorities framework concerning the environment. What do you think the public authorities of countries need to do to address the financing of trade in Africa?
Well, I think the very important step was the ratification of the AFCFTA, but that's just really the first step. Now what has to happen is cross-border regulations. There's different types of regulations that need to be updated in the context of the AFCFTA to allow cross-border transactions to happen more seamlessly, more easily, and at an efficient cost as well, because you have the technology that's now in place, it's been proven, interoperability is well established. So now what just needs to be done is regulations need to be updated to allow a common market to emerge, because regulation is very important for finance, because every financial institution has to comply with domestic and national regulations. And it's the desire is very clear, the aspiration is something that is the subject of a lot of consensus, but the practicalities have yet to be put into full motion, and I think it takes time. Unfortunately, that's just how institutional frameworks work. You have central banks as regulators, you have telecom regulators, you have different types of regulators who need to move closer towards getting this larger market to work practically.
Thank you very much for this assessment, and thank you very much for answering Africa 24's English questions.
Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gents, here comes the end of this program. Please stay tuned for more on Africa 24 English.
This program was brought to you by the AFCFTA Secretariat on Africa 24.